In a world where high-performance, zero-defect buildings are hard to find, two men are on a mission to disrupt the status quo. Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host and unofficial mediator, here with my colleague, official agitator, friend, and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, Yoda.
Hello, Yoda. So yes, I am the official agitator and rager against the status quo.
For today's episode, we're going to jump into the ethos of mechanical design and building science with Kristof Irwin. Kristof has a degree in electrical engineering and a master's degree in physics, if I get that right, and has worked in a charged particle beam and, I'm going to try to say this right, a gyrostron lab. And get a load of this, he also worked at the hypervelocity wind tunnel facility at NASA. So today he's a lead engineer and principal of Positive Energy, an engineering firm in Austin, Texas, and host of the Building Science podcast. We're going to talk about that. He's a great friend of ours and many others in the industry, always inspirational to talk to. And welcome to the show, Kristof. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Kristof, we want to know, and everybody else wants to know, how you ended up at NASA and now as principal of one of the most progressive engineering firms in Austin. Tell us your story.
All right. So it was actually the Navy. It was a wind tunnel with the Navy. I did live near NASA in Greenbelt, Maryland. But I guess in terms of career path, like a lot of young engineers, I spent a lot of time at the university. I majored in electrical engineering and then ended up studying more physics in my master's. So I actually have a degree in what's called electrophysics, which is a bit of a combination. And I did high energy research projects. Those things that you tried to pronounce were called gyrotrons. I did a master's on a particular flavor of gyrotron, klystrons, magnetrons. So the microwave oven, have you ever used a microwave oven? Those have magnetrons in them. They make microwave energy. So it is relevant. University research can be relevant. I try to go through this really quickly, right? So you bunch of time at the university labs, federal government labs, always applied research. And therein lies the connection to what we do now with, similar to you, Robert, with building science and mechanical engineering. High energy physics or good old mechanical engineering, you begin with the end in mind. Like, what do we want this thing to do? Right? What do we want this machine to do? And at the university, boy, oh boy, was it particular that we really needed it to do something. So beginning with the end in mind, like let's say I'm making a gyrotron. Obviously, I'm going to do a lot of calculations, a lot of modeling, and then I'm going to cut metal. I actually spent a lot of years in machine shops. I learned to weld, I learned to machine, and I'd build something, and it was built based on what I needed it to do. It was not built based on low first cost or what the preferences of my funding committee were. And then I get into building. So basically, yada, 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 basically like a 14-year career doing various applied research projects for government and university labs. And I actually grew a little disillusioned of academia, I guess you could say. And so I left the University of Texas at Austin. And within a few weeks, my neighbors were asking me to do remodeling projects on their home because they had seen my wife and I work on ours. And after about a year of that, I said, oh, instead of looking for a career, I'll just build houses. And I guess I was kind of buying old, beautiful bungalows here in downtown Austin and fixing them up and selling them, kind of flipping before flipping was cool, before it was a thing. And, there's a lot of stories associated with that, but really good experience. I was a custom residential builder for about 12 years. And then 2007-8 happened. And I was gifted a big pile of debt as a business owner. And but in the meantime, what had happened, I guess it was fortuitous, and I haven't really told the story, is that the city of Austin started requiring performance testing at final to get your permit, to get your certificate of occupancy. And that meant blower door and duct blaster. And so, I'm an engineer and I'm coming out of labs and I see equipment coming into my job site. And I'm like, all right, now we're talking. So I am like the worst enemy. I'm following him around. What does this mean? What does that mean? Finally, the guy turned to me and put his hands out and said, look, I just know how to set it up and I just know how to take the data. I don't know what it means. Completely unsatisfied. I'm like, what?
Right.
You don't know what the numbers mean? So I enrolled in a ResNet training class and loved it. I really appreciated that there was systems thinking and that there was the ability to look at this, the climate, the occupant, the enclosure, mechanical systems as one thing leading to an outcome. And so I got certified. I started teaching for ResNet training classes. Ended up growing a little testing business. And boy, was it quickly apparent that the rules, quote unquote, the ACA, let's say manual SJDT, were not being followed. And so, I've left out quite a bit, but basically getting to the end of it here is we do mechanical design for residential systems. And it's a specialized field. Very few people know about it. Very few people do it. And I think it's been a timely, we've lucked out that it's been timely because generally speaking, human society today is experiencing a lot of very nice, sophisticated products in their world. And the home is not currently one of them, but it could be.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of questions off that. So one is, do you consider yourself then, would you describe, if I said to you, what's your job? I met you at a cocktail party. I said, what are you? So are you an engineer? Are you a developer? Are you a mad scientist?
Well, I am a PE. I have, that credential lets me call myself an engineer. However, I think that really at a very basic level, me as a person, I'm a problem solver. And it would be so nice if the problem that needed to be solved was an engineering problem. But it's not. It's human psychology that we're dealing with. It's systems thinking. It's, buildings are a huge laggard technology, and the public generally doesn't realize the astounding upside potential that's not happening. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on the problem, and that means integrated project delivery, IPD, right? Yep. That's very important. And then something I learned from Robert that we call human-factored building design. And that, you've probably already said it, is design around people. A good building follows. That so doesn't happen. We currently design around visual, spatial aesthetics. We design around people's personalities, right? We design around what their mental constructs regard as a good house, meaning big and maybe opulent or whatever. But, whatever they want. But we don't design around their lungs or their thermal sensors in their skin, and we darn well should.
Yeah, as an ex-developer, I can tell you that developers, as far as they're concerned, will tell you that bathrooms and kitchens sell houses. So they must be shiny and they must look good, and that is it. That's about as far as the thinking goes.
Oh, when you also the term that can be from whatever oil it is perfect. Because that's going to be inspected very carefully.
So I looked at your website and I saw your video called Hitting the Reset Button. That really struck a chord with me because that's my basic thesis is, for God's sake, can't we just all agree this isn't good enough and do something better? And I like that. I'm going to link to that in the show notes. But can you talk about what prompted you to do that video segment? Because that really sort of sums up how I feel about it.
Before you do that, Kristof, I'm just going to read a couple of sentences that Kristof, you guys uploaded onto your website. It's just sort of to set the stage, because I thought this was some really great words that you wrote. So I'm just going to read this, and what it says: it's time to find the reset button. It's time to re-examine our view of what we know about delivering conditioned spaces to our clients and to ourselves. The upside potential in buildings is staggering. For some vantage points, it's astounding and inexplicable why the very places we live continue to be held in a laggard state of performance relative to what is possible. And I think that's awesome. Our industry transition is held captive to an outdated vision. And without a proper vision, our mission, strategy, and tactics are ineffective.
Right.
That is bang on. So and Adam had a good question there. Like, what led you up to that?
Well, just like you guys, right? I'm just all of us and all of us listening. Human being, and part of being human means you have emotions, and part of that comes from what you care about. And for whatever reason, my wiggly path through life has led me to care about buildings and particularly homes, right? So I actually am, it's weird. It's like the old expression, looking for your keys under the streetlight. Like you dropped them over there, but you're looking here because the light's better. We as a society right now, we seem to be looking for the solution for good buildings in commercial buildings. That's not how people spend their time. It needs to be homes. And I'm through mincing words around that. So many years as a building science consultant and an engineer, it was like, oh, we really should say buildings and not homes because that's where the money is. But reeling myself back. So, the core reason of what led to those words on that Reset podcast was caring, was frustration, exasperation, disheartenment, and just the recognition that if more and more of society had the proper vision of what a home could do for them, right? It can support your immune system. It can give you a better night's sleep. Ultimately, any decision that anyone on the owner side or the architect side makes, on behalf of the owner, what they want to do is they want to give that owner a good experience. Well, what does that mean? They want to give that owner a good felt sense of their home, not necessarily a good thought. They want to feel good about what they've done, what they have. And that feeling tone is really, and I realize this sounds a little woo-woo, but I do live in Austin. Yeah. So you build the house and you put Robert Bean in his house and you say, what do you think of home? And what do you mean think? You mean, how do you feel about this home? How do you feel right now? And that's informed from your limbic system, which is informed, as you know, Robert, it's coming out of your, not a neocortical construct. It's your body just bubbles up this felt sense of life. And I don't know if you guys know this. I read a book several years ago. It's something like 1/250,000th of what your body experiences makes its way to your brain.
Wow.
It was between 250 and 50,000th and 250,000. So basically, our bodies are just taking in this massive bandwidth of data, and a little bit of it goes into our consciousness. Oh, I think I need new windows, right? Or something. Yes, that's a good question. So I just want to make one more point, and it is that it's so tempting to feel down on the industry. But what I'm trying to do as a person and as a business, positive energy, let me check out the name, positive energy. Obviously, it has to do with net positive energy homes, but it also has to, yes, we can do this. And implicit in that is I have a lot of confidence in human nature, right? It's tempting at this time in the press cycle or what's happening at world events to feel a lot of disheartenment about human nature. But I know that parents that have kids or aging parents in their homes, that if they understood that their air filter was a very poignant moment in their lives, they would make better decisions. As I say at intake meetings, this is another thing that might be useful for this episode is what do you say to people that get through, especially if any of us are thinking about building a house, it's like a gauntlet of decisions, right? And that kind of shuts us. Yeah. So one of the things I say to them is I say, does anybody in your family buy organic produce? And almost always, right, here in Austin, yeah, definitely, right? So why do you do that? Well, I want to reduce pollutant exposure. I don't want all these crazy chemicals in my body. Kaboom. You just got them. Right? You've said, you can say to them next, you're just telling me that you have a value preference system that says, I want a really good particulate capture system in my home. I want a dedicated dehumidifier in my home, right? And it comes out of organic produce. Yeah. So it's an interesting.
So do you think? I mean, people certainly in the Western world have a very strange relationship to their home, and I think where it's going to skew is people perceive their home as an investment, not a comestible, right? And that's where it's wrong, because I personally think a home is not an investment. It's about, you'd be better off putting your money in the stock market, quite frankly. But yeah, a home is something like a car. You should buy it like you're buying a car. If you want the leather seats in the car, you have them, right? Mm-hmm. If you want, I don't know, the HEPA filter, you should have it. And that's got nothing to do with what you might sell that house for down the road, right? Absolutely nothing.
That's exactly right.
A home is a hedge against inflation, maybe. It's certainly not an investment. Actually, if you do the analysis properly, it's a poor investment. And I think that's where people go wrong. I mean, in Canada at the moment, you can build dog shit and sell it, quite frankly. And and that's the problem, right? So people get what they ask for, right? People are willing to buy dog shit, so they get given dog shit. So the question is, how do we educate people that, all right, you're not going to win the argument that a house isn't an investment. I think that's so bogged into people's mythology, it's not going away. But you could sell them on the benefits, right? Instead of the shiny countertop.
Yeah, absolutely.
A while back, I wrote an article. It was called "In a Town Called Comfort, Only the Blind Can See."
I remember that.
Right. And one of the things that we do with clients, and Kristof, I think you and I have talked about this before, is that, we'll get the client to go back to their existing home and literally sit down in the middle of each room and close their eyes and let their other senses engage. And so, do they hear when the toilet flushes?
Oh, that drives me mad.
Well, now that explains everything, Adam. Now we know. Right? So you think about what people smell, what they feel, what they hear, and that only comes about by shutting down your visual stimulation. And where that came from was that I watched the movie with Stevie Wonder, and Stevie was buying a house. And I thought, well, how does someone who is visually impaired buy a home? Because they're no longer stimulated by the aesthetics. And so their other sensory systems kick in. So in a town called Comfort, only the blind can see. And if it's good for people who are visually impaired, it's got to be good for those who have vision.
Yeah. To touch back in on Adam's point about the investment, we get asked about ROI all the time.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those where you just want to go, you don't get it. So I say things like, well, what's the ROI of your couch? What's the ROI of your pillow? Like, I'm sure about it. But, there is an economic basis. And what you're hearing when someone says, what's the ROI, is you're hearing their value preference system. And what they're saying is, I want to make good decisions in my life. And I believe that good decisions have quantitative outcomes. And there's truth in that. There's absolutely truth in that. It doesn't mean that you can quantify the value of putting on your seatbelt, though, right? So, or having a good air filter. So, I try to hear back to the deeper message and try to answer that.
Right. So, who's your client set? I mean, you're clearly trying to reach probably a more informed client. Are most of your clients informed? How would I describe them? I don't know. If I was just 19, I'd say yappies, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. Sort of young urban professionals, or are they older people, sort of semi-retired or retired, looking for the comfort factor? Who's buying your story, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say that, unfortunately, that the reality is that most of our clients are not coming to us for the health and comfort. They're coming to us on a more basic level, which is something like, well, I have a structural engineer to make sure my building doesn't fall down, my home stays standing and can handle those loads, gravity and wind. And I have a mechanical engineer to make sure it's healthy and comfortable and to deal with those loads, the thermal loads. And so it's much more pragmatic. We really are blessed that here in Central Texas, there's a lot of really thoughtful architect teams. And it was architects. So we put it out there to homeowners, this message we started Positive Energy in 2007 or 8, something like that.
Right.
And really, it was, where the business model showed up was when we started to reach out to architects and offer our services to them. And we're very fortunate that we've had some great architects and some great builders. We work with some great mechanical installers, and we have a string of very comfortable clients that are happy, with our work. And, not sounding negative, but really what's happened is a lot of these architects, the client come to them for I'll just say it, right? There's a process that happens. You hire an architect, that gets handed to the GC, the design gets handed to the general contractor, they hand it to the mechanical installer, and that's where the mechanical design first occurs, possibly, typically, after framing is complete. And so, what we have is a societal system where for basically 70 years, what society has said to the mechanical installer is, we're not going to listen to you until it's too late to get good ideas from you. And when we do ask you questions, all we're really going to ask you is, how cheap can it be and how can you do it?
Yeah.
And so the mechanical installers are not, bad actors. They're responding to what they're being asked, and they're being asked for low first cost. And they're being asked for low first cost because society doesn't understand that there's a huge downstream cost, right?
Yeah.
Like rhinitis, right? And I could go on about that, but I think I'll leave it there.
Part of that is codes too. For example, in the National Building Code of Canada, it's basically reducing the probability that illness will result from being exposed to bad moisture conditions, bad indoor air quality, and bad thermal comfort. But the operative word there is risk of illness. We shall not build a building such that there's a risk of illness. And nowhere does it say that you shall have comfort. Those are completely two ends of the spectrum. It's like the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
Yeah, good point.
Right? And the codes are indifferent to your comfort. It doesn't care about comfort. It cares about illness. And so when your basis is based on that, and the contractors, the mechanical contractors, they know all they have to do is meet the minimum requirements. And what happens in practice, minimums become maximums.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's exactly right.
And that's where one of the flaws exists.
Yeah, to quote Jerry Udelson, he says, was it codes of the floor and standards of the ceiling? But it's always the floor is where you wind up.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're living in, like if you go to Cuba right now, there's a lot of 1950s and 60s automobiles, and probably a lot of people are driving those and they feel like it's just fine. Yeah. You put them in a Tesla, right, or some other nice vehicle, and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
I could have that.
Yeah. So imagine that actually happened right in the frontier days, because when people were riding donkeys, and then all of a sudden someone showed up with a thoroughbred horse, and it recalibrated their whole idea of what transportation could be.
Actually, let's go.
Or Henry Ford. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just want to jump down that rabbit hole of comfort and codes for a minute, which is a bit of a thorny discussion, but comfort is a big thing. You certainly know when you're uncomfortable, right? But do codes ignore comfort because it's hard to define? Because it's so subjective? Is that why, do you think?
I think that... You want to answer, Robert?
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just that because they have to have the lowest benchmark that everybody can reach. It's like track and field. You don't set the hurdle so high that 5% of the people can jump over it. When you're in public school, you set it so low that everybody can jump over it, and that becomes the benchmark. So I think addressing comfort in codes, the way that they do it, of course, is that it can't cause an illness, and as long as you maintain 72 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the benchmark. That's as high as the hurdle needs to get, and of course that is always referred to as an air temperature rather than an operative temperature, which we went into depth in our discussion, Kristof.
Yeah.
And your thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I could dovetail some thoughts into that.
Yeah, so, please.
Codes are implicitly a governmental organization, although they get adopted by a government organization. There's standards development organization that gets adopted and put into some sort of regulatory structure. And in that form, what they're saying is that the government is basically looking for like something like gross domestic product. They're looking at this quantitatively, and they're saying the codes are saying, what can we quantify? Well, it's a lot easier to quantify energy use. And so you may look at the code changes, and there's a good story about code changes at the end here. But let's just say it this way, that 2003, 6, 9, 12, 15, these have all been big years for code changes. And if you want to summarize what they say here in Austin, Texas, the codes say, thou shalt run thine air conditioner less. That's what the codes say, because the air conditioner is the big energy user. And they say, why are you going to have better windows to run your air conditioner less? Why are you going to have higher R values to run your air conditioner less? Why are you going to have better air sealing to run your air conditioner less? So they're basically making it all about energy. And the story is that I get a lot of these comments. We should really talk at some point about pushback from the existing stakeholders in the industry, or new ways of doing things generally.
Yeah.
I get is a lot of comments that start with the line, "Son, I've been doing this for 30 years." And you want to remind them, okay, it's 2017. Let's put the middle of the code transition cycle, 3, 6, 9, 12. Let's say it's 2009, right? So you could say, well, 8 years ago, codes radically changed. And that means building physics radically changed. And you have this code cycle that literally or actually creates a before and after scenario where there's all this experience that occurred years ago, and then there's new ways of relating to indoor condition space that need to stand up now. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting because I think that my theory on a lot of it is having moved to North America from Europe. So there's a lot of hydronic systems, residential and commercial. So, for instance, when I first moved to Canada, I wanted a house with radiators and wanted it built with brick. My real estate agent thought that was hilarious. And I got neither of them things when I bought my house, right? But that's a cultural thing because houses are also a cultural phenomenon, whatever way you cut it. But my theory on North America now, I've been here for a while, is it's geared towards air systems because that is what the supply chain is, right? To change a supply chain is like turning an ocean liner around. It doesn't happen quick. And it is in no one's benefit who's invested in that supply chain to change it, right? So, why not have hydronic systems in houses? Well, because there's no one to do it. The skill set's lost and the supply chain doesn't want to know, right? They price it out of existence. I found this on a commercial building I did, which was a LEED Platinum building, and it was all heavy mass radiant heating and cooling, man. God, did the main contractor fight tooth and nail against that? It was like bloody revolution, American Revolution all over again, right? So, I think supply chain can't be underestimated, but the way I think one possible answer is, going back to energy code. If I was king for a day of America, which should be happening, I would change energy code to be a target of energy per square foot and a resultant temperature or operative temperature range. That's it.
Beautiful.
Then it would just be on innovation and industry to solve that problem. No lobbyists allowed. They'd all be shot on site, and we'd just see what happens. This is why I'm not king of America, by the way.
Well, there is one word in the codes that if you changed it, you would change overnight how people would have to build buildings. And that word is air. Yeah. So when the codes say thou shalt maintain 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius air temperature at design conditions, if you change that to operative temperature or mean radiant temperature, then automatically you would force the entire architectural industry to look at enclosure performance because now you're talking about surface temperatures, not air temperature. One word. And if you did that, you would probably be able to get rid of the energy codes. Yeah. One word.
How do we get people to listen to that one word or motivate one word? If we get back to where Adam went earlier, I mean, what is the magic key that unlocks actual societal change? And unfortunately, it's been shown that information does not cause behavior change, or information alone. Let me be very clear on that. It's not information alone.
I agree.
So we really need to get people out of their neocortex into their bodies, into their feeling centers, because that's what's really going to be our ace in the hole. And, getting back to, my firm, Positive Energy, we're an engineering firm, and we have this really, just the fact that we do residential mechanical engineering, that's unique. We also start with human factored building design, indoor air quality, and thermal comfort as a start. But what's interesting is we get a lot of pushback.
Strange.
It's less and less, a bunch of good projects under your belt and a bunch of happy clients really makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But there's projects that come along. There's one we're dealing with right now where, there was our design and then there's what got installed and they're not the same. But the owner was like, well, I got a design. It's going to be awesome. And there we get into the process, right? And I didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole. I'm going to go there. So the contractor, when they start a project, what is the owner just probably saying to them is, please keep my costs low and please get this done as soon as possible, right?
Yep.
It would be really great if the owner said, what's the most important thing is that when it's done right. But they don't say that. And we have these TV shows, Extreme Home Makeover and such. Don't get me started on that, because I've been given books by my family. Oh, you'll love this book by this TV personality. They don't know the difference between a vapor barrier and a vapor retarder, or that's the air control layer. It's not. Anyway, the point is that the way the public is currently being handed information about buildings, right? Think about hows. Maybe I shouldn't say exactly certain things. Certain websites, certain TV shows. What the public is being trained to think is it is visual spatial. It is about resale value.
Yep.
We need some competing TV shows that say, wait a minute, it's about, this is where you store your loved ones, right?
Right.
In this lovely case, the air she's breathing is crap. I don't care about that, right? So my daughter herself isn't that important. And you're just touching back in, like, why is it that positive energy does mechanical designs, right? It's not because there's nothing else that's useful. In fact, tonight I'm doing a speaker dinner, and tomorrow I'm part of a group that's organized a full day conference on stucco, right? So there's lots of things that are important and we need better education on. But generally speaking, Robert can attest to this. You can too, Adam. You've been in the industry years. Generally speaking, we're suffering now under the tyranny of enclosurism. People, if they say I have a good building, what do they mean? They probably mean they have a good enclosure. They might have fluid applied or peel and stick or good window or good air control layers. Any way that the professionals involved want to like peacock, like, ooh, look at me, I have a good building. It's all related to the enclosure. When are we going to hear MERV ratings, as when people want to talk about, or low duct leakage, or a dedicated dehumidification, or a functional ventilation system? The things that happen in our industry right now for ventilation, oh my God, it's like the Flintstones, and I have some good friends that are builders and really good human beings, hardworking, dedicated people. And yet they'll come, I got to dinner with one of them. I'm from the HBA meeting, and we were discussing implementation of the new energy code. And I'm like, so what does that mean you were discussing implementation of the new energy code? Does that mean you're actually discussing how you would resist changes to the energy code? Well, yeah, actually, that's what it means.
Yeah, sounds like the resistance group, right?
Yeah.
They'll be blowing up post offices before you know it.
Yeah. One more quick comment related to that. And, it's related to the industry. And when it comes to we do a design, we give it to the project team. And now we've been doing it for many years, so we know around what the design should cost. And we'll see ranges in price sometimes. One bid is double another bid.
Yeah.
Right. And what I see there is that a mechanical installer is really saying, I don't want to install this system. I don't know how to install a system. I don't want to install this system. Therefore, I'm going to bid it so high. Well, it would be a lot better for society if that installer would just say, I don't want to bid this project. Yeah. Because what happens is then companies like mine have to kind of backpedal and re-educate and tell the architect, no, it doesn't have to cost that much, right? But all it takes is one data point. One architect says, holy moly, we do one of these designs with positive energy and it's like it's gold plated. It's not. It's just not flagrantly first cost optimized.
That's right. I mean, that's another way contractors deal with it, right? They don't want to deal with it. They price it out of existence. That happens a lot. That phenomenon was huge in commercial sector when LEED Gold and Platinum buildings became the basis of boasting and LEED Silver became irrelevant. And some contractors just price them off the table. It's a strategy, I guess. But you're right. Again, it all goes back to supply chain. I used to say this in part of my shtick when I used to speak at conferences, architects think they're in control, but really, in North America, the supply chain and contractors are in control. You try build something, you design something they don't want to build, they will throw so many obstacles in your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the super tanker analogy is apt. I mean, we have installers that have embraced our designs and been able to grow accordingly, right? So they say, well, you know what, I send my project manager to this site and I hand him your design and I give him your business card and they call you for questions. And then I can go to the next site. Like, cause usually it was the principal of the firm that would walk the project with the project manager on talking the mechanical installer side. And basically in real time, figure out how they were going to do a design, how they were going to integrate the mechanical design with the aesthetic architectural design and the structural design. That was happening, pop it, do it now.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment. If you're enjoying this podcast, we need your help. We're not asking for money, just a minute of your time. Our goal is to make the Edifice Complex podcast as relevant, educational, and useful as possible. By having good ratings, we can reach the widest audience. Therefore, our request is two small things. If you haven't already, leave us a review and rating on iTunes. And subscribe to the Edifice Complex on YouTube, even if you normally only listen to the audio version. These two things will help us immensely. Also, if you would like Robert or Adam to speak, teach, or consult on your project or business, please email admin@edificecomplexpodcast.com. Thanks for your time, and now back to the show.
It always comes back to me for, why do we have what we have? Because owners, be they residential or commercial, accept it, right? You couldn't give me a car with defects, yet somehow you can hand over every building with defects and it is just fine. Mm-hmm. Even contractually, that's fine. I just don't get that. Why can't...
there's no test drive.
Yeah. So, if someone handed me my Tesla and it had, here's the 12 months defects and latent defects list, we're going to come back and knock that punch list out before the warranty expires, you wouldn't drive that car away. Yet it is 100% okay to hand a building over like that. Why? I do not get it. Well, I know why, because the landlords want the rent roll and someone wants the money, right? And the money trumps everything. But there's a cultural there. Again, I'm a big fan of culture because for me, I think the differences between everything is culture. For me,
absolutely.
So why are Canada and America different, right? On the surface, they should be very similar, and they are. But there are also some cultural differences there, right? Same
absolutely.
With the UK and Canada. Right? I'm a Brit, and I've moved to Canada and become a Canadian. I thought that would be a breeze. Canada is one of the hardest places I've had to settle into because there's a culture here that's just not like my culture, right? It's the Brits are very aggressive, the Canadians are not, and it took me a while to tune into that. So buildings are an expression of culture, right? For me, they're art, they're structure, they're technology, but they are also art, and art is an expression of culture, right? So,
absolutely, but not just the visual art. They're a functional art.
Yeah. So so you're getting on to one of our favorite podcasts, which is really.
I am. Yeah. Share that story. Share that story.
We're dropping a podcast on the 15th of this month with Holly Chant, who's an American Brit, who is based in Abu Dhabi, works for one of the big consultants there, and she was talking about sustainability, and she spoke about performance as a form of beauty in and of itself. But it's a hidden beauty, right? Mm-hmm. But it is beautiful. Now, all three of us can appreciate that because we're engineers, right? But it is a thing of beauty. Somehow we got to get the beauty of performance into the public consciousness, right?
Absolutely.
And have it as an expression of culture somehow. So does, people buy houses with nice kitchens and drives and gardens, right? Because there's a peacocking element to that. There's a look at me element to that. So how do we bring performance into that? Does it become this is the beauty, I'm rambling here, but I'm on a roll, so I'm going with it, right? So I came from the UK into North America 10 years ago. Never heard of LEED. We have BREEAM in the UK, right? It's the most successful green building system in the world that no one knows about. Typical Brit thing, right? So I have a love-hate relationship with LEED. It is genius, and I don't like it all at the same time. I don't like it because it is perceived by the market to be sustainability, it begins and ends with LEED, right? That's what I don't like. But the genius of it is, in a continent where energy prices are quite low and materials are abundant, it made having a high performance building, it became competitive, right? I have a LEED Gold building, your building's LEED Platinum. That worked. So somehow it got all this sustainability movement going just by making it I've got this, why haven't you got that? So first LEED certified was cool, then LEED Silver became cool, and last time I looked, bragging only began at LEED Gold, right? A girl that used to work for me, she used to say, LEED Silver, you can trip over a bus stop and get LEED Silver. I need LEED Gold, right? So my point of this rant is this. The LEED system commercially on commercial buildings worked. It created a competition based on boasting or betterment or whatever you call it, right? So, but somehow it didn't work in residential, right? You can't sell a LEED platinum house because people don't know what it means or don't care for some reason. So somehow we've got to make that peacocking about performance desirable, right? I don't know how we do that, right? Or do the three of us pitch HGTV and start a show? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it is starting to happen, Adam, but you can think about it. People want to have solar panels on their roof, right? Now, granted, they might want to have solar panels on a house that there was a lot of other places to spend the money, but it is evidencing that value preference system that says, I want to be seen as caring about the environment, which is a precursor perhaps to actually caring about the environment and changing action. High-end windows is another one. Sometimes on mechanicals, you get people that are actually, it's rare, sometimes they're interested in certain pieces of equipment. I want that, Carrier Infinity or something like that. They want a certain system. You want to tell them, well, actually, the distribution system is much more important than the actual box itself, the Prius with underinflated tires metaphor. Yeah. But where I want to take you, so it's complicated because there's groups like ResNet. There's many local green building programs like Austin Energy Green Building, fantastic program, been around since the 80s. And those groups, they're really working. They're fighting the good fight to put quantitative metrics to buildings. And, creating an institution to do anything is its own challenge, especially if it's, trying to compete with existing norms. But what happens is let's say you're ResNet or let's say you're Austin Energy Green Building. Well, there's a trade-off between how accurate and precise your performance rating is going to be and how much uptake you're going to get from the market. And you want a lot of uptake because you want it to be relevant. But if you really get into it, you're going to be pushing back against the status quo on how homes are delivered to society currently, and everyone's going to get a low rating. Yeah. So instead, you kind of say, okay, you can have this certain number of stars. And really, when I was a builder, I always did the 5-star green homes, which is their highest level. It was just I would never consider omitting any of the steps that were in getting a 5-star with Austin Energy. And yet there are people that will brag about a 3-star. And, I should be careful how I'm talking here, but what's happening there is a trade-off between relevance in the mainstream industry, which means, I got to give you a relatively low bar, an easy path to compliance. Yeah. Versus I really need this to be meaningful. It's a dance.
It's a chicken.
And we're all dancing.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg game, right? Because you're right. So again, another part of my shtick is, it's great to see solar panels on roofs, but my point is the sustainability stuff that really matters is things like good envelope, high performance glazing, great construction standards. They're all hidden, right? Whereas the roof panels are a bit of a peacock affectation, absolutely. Right? And but I think maybe you're right. That is the way you get the ball rolling. That is the egg that brings the chicken, maybe.
Yeah, I think all three of us, all of us, all you guys listening too, right? You have to remember to work with your own disheartenment, and anger and outrage and indignance doesn't change society. No. Working with what you have, and basically telling yourself, I will never give up. I will keep pushing this ball up this hill for the rest of my career, come what may. It's important, ultimately society changes because people don't give up. And then you can look at larger trends. There's another podcast out there called The Energy Gang that I just love. And basically we're witnessing Amory Lovin's long predicted by industry for-profit revolution in how this country delivers energy to itself, right? Energy is now a technology, not a fuel, Yeah. The power of technology, not fuels, that's huge. So that's going to drag the home sophistication and building sophistication along with it eventually. So you just have to keep that. I don't want to sound too crunchy. I'm definitely an engineer and I like calculations. I wish that was where the lever point is to move this industry. I don't think it is in technology. I think it's in psychology. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That's we've had a podcast recently about the Internet of Things, which I got some very mixed feelings on, but it's probably moving us in the right direction. But the big piece that is always hard to solve is psychology and the culture deriving from that, right? I don't know what the answer is. I'd love one though.
So, one of them is the a device. Right? So another great podcast, there's so many out there, is IAQ Radio. Joe Hughes. He's one of my heroes, and he doesn't know it, but he's been my mentor for 10 years or something. But the Foobot, right? That's some simple device that measures like indoor quality parameters, sends it to your phone. I have one. I've recommended it to clients. It's an Internet of Things device, and suddenly a whole category of unseen data in the home is suddenly being seen, right? It was started out years ago with like TED, the energy detective, monitoring, when you're using how many kilowatts. And now we're getting into real-time indoor air quality sensors. And there's a Reset program. Ironically, the Reset podcast, different thing out there, the Passive House Conference. So, and Reset is a program that on indoor air quality, you can Google it. This Internet of Things is actually going to poise us to make the unseen seen. And when people go, yeah, my bedroom's lovely, but my PM 2.5 is in the range, that's bad, or my humidity is at a level that's known to cause negative health outcomes, well, suddenly people are going to start to change. I really believe that. And once again, faith in human nature. But the juggernaut of the industry, as you say, the super tanker, it can get intimidating. Yeah, it really can.
Actually, that's a good point. I like the idea of so much information becoming visible. Like, it's been there. Like, my dog doesn't know the internet exists, but it exists, right? This information exists, but people are not seeing it. So, if that becomes visible and then people start comparing it, well, why is my house not like their house? Maybe that's the answer. That's the thing that turns the ocean liner around. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, it's great that we're having this opportunity to talk and have kind of probably like-minded true believers listen. I would love to challenge everyone in the audience to send this podcast to somebody that they don't think would be listening naturally. Mm-hmm. Because, our goal today is not to speak at an engineering level, but to speak at a level of, give you the Reset vision on what things could be. And man, right now we're really struggling through system that's been constrained by low first cost for many decades. And right. Yeah. Oh, I had one more thing related to that. Apologize. Here it is. All the people listening, the three of us, any of us, when we're talking to an owner or a developer, right, that is a very poignant moment. That is a moment where you need to say, okay, I need to take a moment, collect my thoughts, take a deep breath, and try to share maybe just one idea to make inroads. Like developers, we work with some developers that are looking to have brand strength and brand differentiation. And it is not to tell them, do you know that health is the new green? The green is on its way out and health is coming in. And
I like that. I like that. Health is the new green. I'm writing that right down.
Or imagine you're a developer, and we talked to one of these, and they didn't bite, unfortunately, that is making senior living centers, right? Oh my gosh, talk about a place where good air quality is important. And it's going to significantly impact the quality of people's final years. They brand around that, kaboom, man. People are going to be coming to their institutions. They're going to have brand strength. But you need the pump to be primed. Someone's got to do it and show that they're making the money branding that way. But it'll happen. I have no doubt.
I hope so. And I mean, this is the first time we've had a long conversation, but I love your optimism on this because no one elects a cynic, right? No one votes for a cynic. That's why I have to be partnered with Robert, because I'm an asshole and I'm angry and I need someone to balance it out. But, the reality is people listen to positive things, right? If you're selling benefits, you're explaining the benefit. It doesn't necessarily turn the tanker around, but you're starting to get the knowledge out there. And that's what we've all got to do. Every engineer who meets with a client, I think, has a duty of care to push these concepts out there.
I agree.
Talk about indoor air quality, right? Talk about how VOCs are polluting the indoor space. Who talks about VOCs? I mean, I'm a nerd. I understand that stuff, but not many people do. That's volatile organic compounds, by the way, guys.
Yeah. Talk about long-term cost of ownership. And hey, just to talk about your anger very briefly there, because anger is actually connected to beauty, and here's how, right? So your anger is, whenever you see someone angry, you need to know that underneath that they're feeling fear.
Yes.
And what are you feeling fear about? You're feeling fear that the world is not moving in the right direction. What is underneath that? Underneath that is you have a sense of proportion, of beauty, of the way the world needs to be to line up with your internal value preference system, and it's not doing it. So it's interesting that anger comes from caring.
Well, it does. I can tell you why. Since I've had children, I've got 3 children. They're all grown up now in university. But, I always wonder, what is it going to be like for them, right? What is going to happen? I don't want to sound woo-woo, but, I care what happens to my kids and my grandkids and what sort of life is it going to be? Ocean depletion, pollution. And I am not a green Taliban tree hugger by any stretch of the imagination. I'm about as far away from that as you can get. But I still deeply care about what it's going to be like for my kids. And it does piss me off, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I don't know. But getting a bit deep here. But, it matters because everything matters, right? Really, everything's connected. That's something we've all learned. Everything is interconnected. Like the Internet of Things, the people of things, right? We all drink the same water, share the same air. Everything is connected. And if you don't think you're connected to everyone, I think you're in for a bit of a shock later on. Whew, God, that was a deep old rabbit hole. Let me climb back out.
Oh, no kidding, man.
Hey, I could send you. That was a good one, Adam. You went there. And
I'm going to bring my friend April on the next episode. She's a psychologist, brain scientist as well. That's her master's degree. I think she would find this fascinating. The 3 of us.
I love it. There's a link I'll send you after we finish recording here, Adam. Zach Semke did the keynote speaking this year at Passive House and also the year before. And he's with NK Architects. He has one on building swans and the power of arithmetic. Have you read it?
No, but it sounds like a sort of title I would like.
It's a positive message, and it's based on quantified data. So things are poised to change fast, and they need to change fast. So
couldn't agree more
there's
with
reason
that.
for optimism, and really fundamentally human nature, right? We can't give up. We can't get disheartened about human nature. If we do, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great statement.
I couldn't agree more.
There's a little. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and this is a lesson that I learned here, even at my age, we still learn lessons. And this happened, I think, a year or 2 ago, and I was giving a lecture, I think it was actually here in Calgary for the local ASHRAE chapter, and I was talking about the philosophy of sustainability and where we're headed. And admittedly, it was a bit of a negative tone, but this retired elderly engineer came up to the front of the stage, said, "I really enjoyed your talk, but you need to have more faith in the intellect of our youth."
Wow.
Oh, that's deep. That's some deep
Wasn't
stuff.
that good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Having faith in the intellect of our youth.
One thing that's really key to that, right? Exactly, is when you think about the youth. With what they're looking at is they're looking at the world and they're seeing actions that they don't like. But what happens is we quickly seem to connect the action to a person, and then we say we don't like that person or we don't like the people, right? Yeah. There's a little protest going in my neighborhood right now over some here, and they have these signs all over. It says oppose so and so, and I so want to run around the neighborhood with the little stickers that say the actions of, right? Because I'm fully on board with opposing the actions of so and so, but I don't know so and so. Why would I oppose him, right?
Right.
You got to.
I think it's the actions we don't like. It's not people, right? It's actions.
Yeah, this is human tribal nature, right? We got to get on a team and we got to attack someone, and that's something we've got to evolve out of, I think. But yeah, you're right. So look, we're coming up onto an hour. I think most people's bandwidth for a technical podcast is about an hour, in my opinion. So I'd like to try and wrap up. This has been awesome for me, and I've been down some emotional rabbit holes here, and I'm coming back out now, and I'm feeling a bit more chilled. So is there anything you'd like to wrap up or leave us with before we go?
Sure. I didn't prepared remarks, but I would like to sound a little more like an engineer and building scientist, which is that the enclosure is very important. And I'm a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I talk about the enclosure of the tyranny of enclosurism, but only a little bit, because what I really hope for in the next 10 years in our industry is everyone, all of those who are listening and the people they work with on their teams, starts to wake up and pay attention to mechanical systems, right? We need a decade of professionals in our industry that know enough to engage and learn more. And right now, people don't know enough to really engage with the mechanical systems. They're really into it on fluid applieds and peel and sticks and, window flashing. So I really think that I would like to make the next 10 years one where we push back on the tyranny of enclosurism and encourage people to know about mechanical systems. And then the last two features, I think every person on every project team should recognize that there are different climates in the world, which mean different mechanical enclosure systems are appropriate, and that it all comes down to the occupants. Design around people, a good build follows.
Here. Could not agree more with that.
Yeah, I love that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Statement. I think we might tweak it a little.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to wrap up then, we're going to be posting, we do show notes with the podcast, so we're going to put up the social media links for you on Twitter, to your company website, and I'm also going to provide a link to your video, Hitting the Reset Button, which I encourage everyone to look. It's 4 minutes long, and it is awesome. That's what I'm going to say.
Thanks, Adam.
So,
thank you, Robert.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. And I'm pretty sure we'll have you on again in the future. And I look forward to actually meeting you in person.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
That was awesome. I really like that guy. His positivity was so infectious. He'd make a great teacher. He's the sort of guy you wanted at university teaching you, right?
Yeah.
I like that.
That was really good. He made some comments many comments that were really good. One of the ones I really liked, information alone does not create change.
That was very insightful because we are just inundated with data and information, right? And
we are.
Maybe it's even detrimental, but one thing I loved, there's a couple of things he said I really like. Health is the new green. That is so on point. It is awesome. I've got to use that. I might have to steal that from him. And there was another great one that made me laugh. Air filters, a poignant moment in life. I love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's passion, man. When you talk like that.
Well, and that's the thing about Kristof. The first time we met was actually he was a student in my integrated design course, which is a 14-week program. And you get students that come into, and that's a grind.
Yeah,
that course, there's no doubt, it's a grind. We get a few that actually pass. Kristof was one of them, but he just dove right in, and he asked tons of great questions, and he was fully engaged, and he really he came into the program with the pieces of the puzzle already constructed. But you could see in the time that he was in the course, he was figuring out how they were going to come together. And when he graduated from the course, it's like he had his marching orders, like he sort of knew. And then every time we met afterwards, it was just, we kept building on. And he's a philosopher at heart. He's really well read and really well studied in many fields. And he made some comments about technology versus psychology.
Yes.
Which I thought was brilliant.
What makes him stand out, he's a systems thinker and he's a holistic thinker. So one of my theories is, in the 60s and 70s, if you were a mechanical engineer, it was probably okay just to be focused on that. But the way technology has expanded and system complexity has expanded, that's not enough anymore. If you want to be a great mechanical engineer, you need to think holistically. You need to know at a pretty good level, about adjacent engineering fields like architecture, electrical engineering. It isn't good enough just to go in there and be a one-man trick anymore, or one-woman trick. You've got to be rounded. I think the engineers of the future are going to be rounded, but they're also going to be subject matter experts in something at a very deep level. You're going to need both of them dimensions to be a top of your field. Otherwise, you're going to be in a cubicle. And you just said something really important, and that is that you have to be in both of those dimensions. I think that's what you. That's what you said. Both dimensions. Right? You need breadth and depth.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a mechanical engineer, you need super depth at that. You've got to be like a Jedi Knight, but you've also got to have the breadth to understand how your field fits into the building, how your systems impact electrical, mechanical, civil.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just be in your own little silo anymore. Those days are just long gone.
Yeah.
And
yeah, totally agree with that.
I don't think universities are on board with that, though. Again, universities, all right, yeah, they get the kids for 4 years, and you know it's not a full 4 years, but I just think there's so much needs to be done at the educational level to bring students and technicians into what they're going to face. Right? They're not. Mm-hmm. Again, this is where I think every faculty should have someone like Peter Rumsey or yourself going in and just saying, right, there's professors that are going to teach you the deep theory. You need that. But I'm here to tell you about the application of what you're going to do, because that's what's missing, right?
Yeah, you know, absolutely.
The application side needs to be tied with that theory. Otherwise, they come out great at calculus. This was my thing, right? We used to, when I had my business in Canada, we'd interview these graduates, and they were clever, so clever. They were great, but I used to describe them as people who are great at calculus and math with a little bit of thermodynamics, but nothing else. Right. Yeah. So you were getting really a blank slate that you then had to bring into your company and teach them about fans and pipes and ductwork and, you know, and how a building is constructed. So, you know, that's the missing component. Maybe there's an angle there for the Robert and Adam University. I don't know, but there is.
Yeah, there we go.
Something not quite right with the way engineering is taught. I think it's not holistic enough, I suppose would be the way to summarize it.
Yeah. I mean, I've taken on that challenge in our website on an article about the trades. And if you look at the curriculum for somebody that's in the HVAC program, you know, they talk about electrical and they talk about gas and they talk about pipe fitting and sheet metal work. And they talk about, you know, more of the assembly type of stuff, but we don't teach them why they're doing that. No. There's nothing in their curriculum that talks about human physiology or human psychology, but yet at the end of the day, when there's a complaint, it will be a complaint about comfort, but we don't teach them about it.
No, the why is a big thing actually, and I think to motivate people, they have to understand the why for everything they're doing. You can't be motivated if you don't know why, right?
I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, so totally I don't know. We've had a bit of a deep conversation this afternoon.
We have.
Very philosophical. Yeah. I think I need to go and get drunk.
I'm going to go back and start working on my house because it's just about finishing the renovation, and I'm looking forward to having that project done.
Okay.
And I can tell you we had a lot of philosophical discussions on what we were doing about the house, but like Kristof said, for us, it was about doing everything right. And sometimes we had to disassemble things because they weren't right. Yeah. And that ultimately, the next owner of the house is going to get is something that was done right.
Yeah, I hope they appreciate it. See, that's embedded value. That this could be hard to describe, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, mate, until the next time.
Adam, always a pleasure.
All right, see you soon.
All right, man. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. Also, if you would like Robert or Adam to speak, teach, or consult on your project or business, please email admin@edificecomplexpodcast.com. See you next time.